Well, welcome everyone to this next edition of the S.H.O.P, the social hub of positivity. And today with us we have a very positivity type person-ish thing, human being, soul, vibration, energy, chocolate cake. I mentioned the chocolate cake. Toshi Parsons, how are you?
Very well.
Excellent.
Better for seeing you all.
You're very kind. And that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
That was simple.
Wow. So I tell you what, while I'm drinking this green tea, everyone, and that's another episode, can you introduce yourself to these wonderful people who don't know who you are or what you are about? Because we've met recently at our shop, the Social Hub of Positivity in Emery Gate. You were doing a workshop on behalf of Wiltshire Council, wasn't it?
Yeah, I decided
In our
again
shop.
that I would put my name forward. Well, one of my clients put my name forward, and I was like, yeah, of course, adult learning disability.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
It's like, again, and I'll try and do whatever I can for it. So, and so that's the connection with you lovely guys through a conversation afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I like about that shop, that social hub. It brings together lots of people, including the councils, the positive members of the local councils and councillors who get involved and know it as a... I'm just going to talk and drink at the same time.
That's fine.
But I'm not going to eat. I've done that before.
Doesn't work.
It's a bit rude, apparently.
Okay.
I set the stuff in my face. We did a review on some sandwiches once. It was a cream tea, wasn't it, or something down in... Oh no, you weren't there, you didn't film it. It was the Maya. Me and Donna did a cream tea in Purbeck. Sorry, just gone on a thing. I'm not going to eat those things, but thank you for bringing them in. You're very kind.
No, that's okay. I always find a normal conversation is over food and drink. And to me, the best conversations I ever had with my kids was around the table, or, it's that, or friends. It's that we're too busy, so let's eat and drink and chat at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something to be said about it. And I think when I was a musician back in the day, when we were on tour in France, I used to like the idea of how the French approached their food. I mean, from the side. No, I mean, as in, they had some meals lasted 5 hours. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they had slow service. I mean, even in their own homes and what have you. A culture that does that actually is really quite important, isn't it? It's very, it's not a ritual as such, but it's getting there.
Well, again, it's a sacred thing,
I
a
think
meeting
so.
of people.
Yeah.
And in that meeting is the exchange of food and information. And to me, I'm with it 100%. I used to, in schools, so my background is yoga. So for me, it's like, how can children digest their food better? And I've seen since my time in schools that lunch breaks have got smaller and smaller and everything becomes faster and faster. And actually, there isn't that time for that social meet. And I remember saying time and time again, even in primary schools, put some music on in the background, allow that pace, that rhythm to be set for their digestive system. And that's what a really nice meeting of people is that you come into balance with each other.
I think I understand totally. I think that's one of the shames, and there's many, about modern education, and it isn't the teachers, trust me, it's not the head teachers, it's not the staff or the parents or the children. It's the system that they're expected to, they just about survive. I don't think there's much thriving going on. I think there's a lot of mental health issues with the young people because of the nature of how they are.
It's evolved, and people, do you
think, if I always think evolution means it gets better?
I agree.
I don't think it has evolved. I think it's...
Thank you for that, because that's sort of taking me down a different avenue, because I always like to think of a spiral and that concept that we should be evolving, but we get stuck on circles within the spiral, if that makes sense. And the education system being a good example that it's sort of stuck on that loop.
Well, it's not. I know a fair few teachers, and we work with loads of schools, and if it was left to the teachers and the head teachers,
different.
Their interactions would be completely different. The timings, all sorts, all nature of stuff. So I think sometimes people and parents feel pressured when teachers feel the need to strike. That teaching, and now we're on the subject, isn't one of those, isn't as exalted and isn't as paid. Everything's wrong. I mean, we've got people doing nothing, getting too much money, Prince Andrew, and we've got people like all sorts of, we've got an unelected MP who comes from a very wealthy background, and it's all sort of, oh mate, you're so out of touch, it's unbelievable. We've got an appalling Labour Party now. Keir Starmer should be ashamed of himself, but not just him, all across the board. But the fact that nurses, doctors, blah blah blah, NHS, post office, and teachers, etc., feel the need to strike is abhorrent, really. I don't know how we got to this subject,
it's really,
but we're
really
here.
Nice. I'm liking that
We're
it's
here.
evolved, because my passion is children.
Yeah.
My passion is that they are the most important, I don't want to use the possession, but that they are the most important connection that we have. And I feel that I have to get it right. What I've learnt to my age to now and experience, I don't want that cycle to repeat itself. And there has to come a point where there's amazing teachers. I've worked with some absolutely incredible heads, they're out there, but a lot of them get very exhausted and have to move on, and that's a shame. But again, I totally like that we've sort of come to this particular point, because it is my passion of like that midpoint of how do we recognise what we have, and how do we, I don't want to use even the word enlighten, it seems too old and too dated. How do we align people with the truth? Coming back to the essence of who they are, rather than, the finger pointing, needing to strike, which it's good because people are expressing how they feel, but how much change does it actually make?
Well, yeah, but strike is one thing. That they are so exploited and damaged by the system that they have to try and make work, which is see, I have this sort of ideal, I guess, that about politicians, about politics. But I definitely think we should have citizens' assemblies, and if you don't know what a citizens' assembly is, people look it up, because that's what we need. I since the pandemic, I've realised, having exposed some appalling behaviour with local councillors in Chippenham. So again, I would strongly advise everyone to screw down and really observe who's doing what in their locality, who's pretending to represent people, who is falsely, disingenuously coming together, coalescing to, I don't know, get more houses built where houses don't need to be built, destroy the climate, etc. Capitalist system is an abhorrent thing. It doesn't work. It never has. All sorts of systems that don't work. But unfortunately, the people that are up against it are usually in vocations, and that's how they get exploited, like the nursing profession, like doctors, like teachers. It's like, right, maybe you should explain a little bit more about who you are and what you do, because we've just jumped in here.
I know, and I'm fully aware of that, but it actually feels really relevant.
Oh no, that's great. I think I scare the bejesus out of A, the people that I'm talking to, and B, the audience are going, now,
who is this person?
Who's he talking to now? I get it.
It's like,
somebody, she's nice, but what's going on?
What is going on with this conversation? Absolutely. So my background from childhood is a belief in pure love.
Yeah.
So I absolutely believe that the essence of who we are is pure love. And my personal journey has been incredibly bumpy. And basically I've done a bit of neuroscience, a bit of epigenetics, a bit of quantum physics, because what happened to me, I almost was seeing this reality in front of me that wasn't right. I felt like the alien that had landed as a child. I really genuinely thought, why are people treating each other this way? Why are people treating animals this way? But if they treat each other this way, it's no surprise they treat the animals this way, and then it's no surprise that the land and nature is nowhere in recognition. So my journey has been very passive. So when you're born into a world which looks, feels, and you're incredibly sensitive, you don't want to stand out, because you realise by speaking up that you're going to be different, and you're desperately trying to fit in to this or understand. So for me, a lot of my younger years was trying to fit into a system, because I wanted to belong to something, because I felt so different from everybody else. So I went the normal route of being dyslexic at school, which I didn't realise, loved learning, just couldn't recall anything. And was lucky enough to get an office job for Wessex Water, which I adored. It was
funny enough, we're doing a project with Wessex Water, bless them.
Yeah.
Over the summer with young people.
Yeah.
And the community, actually, not just young people, but the whole community. You see in our shop, there's already art.
I did walk down,
and
the artwork. I did. I had a walk down because you mentioned
have a look at
our
that.
collection.
Actually, anyone? Yeah,
it's really nice, and I don't know who the artist was that did the pictures as well. The water cycle was really, really good. I thought that was really nice.
Well, there's workshops. That's the whole beauty about the shop.
Yeah.
About that lovely space in Emery Gate is that.
Well, the water pictures were brilliant. I loved the ones that were in the window.
Yeah, they're the participants.
Yeah, they're absolutely brilliant.
So the whole relationship with water, the widest concept, as you say, the water cycle and people's interaction with it. We're doing questionnaires and stuff so that people, in partnership with Wessex Water, I have to say it to them, and it's like a great thing that they're doing. Do I think that all utilities should be in the people, as in the country's ownership? Yes, I do. You can't possibly make money out of a resource like water, can you, in a moral world? That's absurd. Where are people going to get the water? Oh, no, you're all right. I won't get it from the sewers or from the. I won't use the sewers that all our public money paid for. I won't do that, or all the infrastructure that was paid for by the taxpayer. No, I won't use that. I'll use direct from heaven. No, it's absurd and appalling that any privatisation.
Yeah, I went through privatisation with.
Bless you. And what was your thought about it? And no disrespect to people who work in these utilities. They're the same people that were working with the same sort of people that were working there when they weren't privatised. They're the same people. So, privatisation's a good idea. For who?
Absolutely.
Just for people who've got disposable income that can buy the shares. Right. Hedge funds. Right. It's a con. Absolute con.
Well, for me now, that's what lockdown, as a naive young person trying to fit in, and I absolutely adored working for Wessex Water. I have to say, they gave me loads of opportunities.
No, you did say they're a great company, and this is what I'm saying. Lovely people working in a really good industry, but it shouldn't be done for money. It should be done because it's a necessity.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
But that's
different rates of water. Oh yeah, you're not paying that much. We're going to make your water slightly more poisoned. What the hell? It's ridiculous.
Well, I see it very differently now, in the irony of, a lot of my research when I started working with children, because that's what happened. I had my own children and then went into the education system with them, realising they were highly sensitive children, and realising that I was struggling putting them into the system. That's when everything started to change for me. So that's when I started looking at all the different healing modalities, because I was trying to understand and fathom out what was going on, as well as what always kept me sane was the physicality of the body, always coming back to some sort of physical movement, and the power of water was one of the first things that I started to research.
It's really vital, isn't it?
Well, there's a Japanese scientist, unfortunately he's passed away now, but his work continues on, Matsui Emoto, and he basically would freeze water, put it under a microscope, and you would get all the different crystals.
Yeah.
And then he related that to what was being said, how dirty the water was. So straight away, my brain is really good at dot to dot. I might have been dyslexic, but I was really good at joining dots together. And so straight away, I come back to the human biology, of which they say we're 70+% water.
Yeah.
Which, as you go on, you learn that if we are that, then our belief systems are impounding on our body, depending on the water that we drink and the thought process of who we are. So for me, that connection, I don't know if that makes sense.
100%. That's why I have a water filter. Do you have a water filter?
No.
While we're on this subject, isn't it interesting? You do not.
No, because I believe we're more than the water filter.
No, fine. But what I'm saying is, you do appreciate though that there are all sorts of stuff in the water.
It's absolutely 100%. I
Yeah.
know what's in there, but
Yeah.
I believe we are pure love.
Yeah.
So if you can work from toxins,
Yeah.
no toxins. There's duality, there's
Yeah.
polarities, there's opposites, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it.
Yeah.
And I neither accept it or reject it. I know it's happening, but
Yeah.
the more we get pulled into one, that's how we hardwire in our belief systems. So I've really learned to sit. And it takes practice, because you're taking control of your emotional side, not to fire up. And sometimes you can't help it. If something fires you up, then, through lockdown I shouted at the radio more than I have ever shouted, because I didn't believe what I was hearing, where you might have picked up a lot of, trust funds, hedge funds, whatever you want to call them, the money side. I did all my learning on the money side in lockdown. So, and that's what made me respond. And coming back to neither accepting it or rejecting, I learned that I had to find a middle ground, because either way I would become too voiced. So that's where I come back to this point, this midpoint, which to me is pure love. And I don't want to hardwire my brain in the wrong way.
Possibly better explain in your own terms what pure love is, because you obviously, I'm sure aware obviously that people sometimes, I do a lot of workshops, or have done previously, in many different settings, and dare to talk about the aspect of love within humanity and its value and whatever, but then spend a bit of time defining it, because people sometimes think it's romantic love, or sometimes think it's sexual love, and it's like
political. It could be.
Well, here's the thing. So could you explain?
That was just popped out from nowhere, because normally I'd say religious love or biological love.
Can you explain what you mean by it?
So by pure love, I mean the essence of what we all are. It's what we all have in common, along with silence and stillness, which is the teaching point that I always come from. To be totally okay to be in your own body with whatever else is happening and going on. So pure love for me, and I've had to really work with it too as well, because it can be just a chemical attraction to somebody, that biological side. It can be just that physical, it can be an addiction, and to me, pure love is not that. It's pure love is in alignment with nature. So pure love is nature. Nature is pure love. Nature is the universe. Pure love is the universe, the cosmos. So
are you? Sorry, just because I'm using the word love to describe the word love is going to. I know there's a few people I know who watch this. They'll go, wait a minute.
Bring them on.
Wait a minute. He's saying to her. Geordie's back. He's saying to her, explain what you mean by pure love, and she's using the word love to describe it. It's just doing my head in like.
Yeah.
Does she mean positive energy?
No.
You don't need positive energy. You don't mean, it's not like Dylan Thomas, is it the force that through the long grass drives the, do you know that poem?
No.
I thought that's the essence of what you're talking about.
Well,
it's
it'd be a nice poem for me to look up.
Yeah. The force that through the.
It might well be. From
that
what you've described. There's lots of people that talk about it, and the thing is, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're happy, but underneath that is always that pure love. And pure love isn't passive, and I was always, as I say, a very passive person, because I wanted to fit in, and through lockdown, I realised I can't behave like this anymore, because actually this is hurting me, and this is not allowing me to, what I would call, embody my whole self. That passivity was almost keeping me out of my body. So, coming back to pure love, that's always there, but nature isn't passive. It will wipe things clean, that raw, the animal. And sometimes we need to roar almost to recognise ourselves again. So a lot of people, me included, that spiritual kind of, I'll be kind to everyone, I tried it, and you're kind, and in the end you get slapped really hard, because energetically, as you talked about, there'll be a little weakness from, it could be a belief system that I have, and nature will come across nature, because that's us as human beings, to push that weakness out, for us to be that raw, pure love that we are. And then what happens is you experience a different type of emotion or a different thought process, and that has to be pushed out of the body for us to realign with holding our boundaries, but holding our boundaries in love, that when you walk into a room, you are who you are. You're simply being. You can't be not that individual. You can't not be Ed. But underneath Ed...
Few people watching this wish I wouldn't.
Well, actually, having met you, I've really enjoyed being with your energy of who you are, because I've always believed in the meeting. I believe there's, Jesus talks with two or more gather in my name. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
It's the meeting of those two energetic fields.
Yeah.
Almost like the spheres come together, and in the middle, there's this energetic thing going on, which we will never be able to put into words, which to me I find in silence.
Right, so and I right as if I was just kind of writing that off. I'm not. I'm often quoted in the same sentence as Jesus. It usually starts with "Oh Jesus," here comes Ed. But anyway, so how? Okay, so through lockdown, you realised, as I think a lot of people did. I certainly did. We were key workers, and we were working with some very distressed families, as you can imagine. The longer it went on, the harder it became, and we'd quite wisely prepared lots of our families that come to our complementary education programme. Done massive files. Donna Lee, as you've met her, had done massive files full of all sorts of stuff, mental health stuff, as well as art stuff, as well as stimulating stuff, knowing that a lot of the families wouldn't have come from the very overcrowded houses, wouldn't necessarily have access to Wi-Fi, etc., etc. We also got, through certain people's generosity, computers for everyone. But here's the crack. When I didn't have as much time to, and we put on lots of stuff publicly, like our open mic the very next day that the first lockdown went on, and we did all sorts of stuff at film festival online. So it was kind of trying to keep all the communication, and thankfully we work in the arts, and we make films and stuff, so we were able to do it, and we've got music studio, blah blah blah. But we got people to contribute from their homes, from their bedrooms. It was really quite a beautiful thing, actually, the open mic during the lockdowns, because it was a way of assembling some sort of cohesion in a time where everything appeared to be disparate. Everything needed to be seemed to be broken apart. Broken apart was the bank balance of the taxpayer that went to all those incredibly already rich people who somehow managed to get even more money. And also those political people whose partners ended up getting... I'm not mentioning our local MP by this. No way am I researcher. No way am I mentioning the fact that our local MP's partner apparently, allegedly, made loads of money on PPI. Don't know if he made it before that. Bizarre how many people sprung up making PPI, isn't it? Isn't it? Is it not funny? Is it not bizarre that so many people said, "Oh, I'll do that. How much are you going to give me? I'm a mate of
and
what's
the
his name?"
companies were actually set up beforehand as well. So that's the sort of research that I did in lockdown, because I'm not a money person.
In preparation.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always love comes first. naively, passively, you know, if somebody needs help, somebody needs help. Do you know what I mean? And it's spontaneous. It's like you can't help it. It's a knee-jerk reaction. So I was mystified when suddenly all these rules were being given out, having worked with children in schools, knowing that was absolutely abhorrent, and there was no way that any of that was going to work for anyone, let alone the families. Having experienced abuse myself, it put me into my last, and I promised myself my last anxious avoidant for like, okay, shit, how do I work with this now? Because I don't believe anything that's going on here. Yet my family, my loved ones, my friends, my community, my country, the world, and it was the first time, having worked with the kids, because I've been beavering away with my head down, doing the best I could for these kids, trying to formulate something so that I could help support the teachers to get a better outcome for the kids. Suddenly I looked up at the world leaders and saw the ADHD, I saw the Asperger's, I saw the emotional dissidence, I saw what I would call, just the whole thing. I could give them label after label of the children that I was working with. And suddenly, I always used to joke when I used to go into the local school here, which was called St Nick's at the time, that those children would have been better MPs than the MPs I had previously.
They'd have probably been less malicious.
Yeah, totally. And that more inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, they were fully inclusive of the other children in the room, always.
That's
and
the joy.
If something was going on, they would do their very best to make sure that the teachers and staff, within their ability to do it, could make sure that they all stay together in a group. So for me, and then I've had to try and drop that because it made me really angry with my own naivety. So, I believe we're all awake to a degree. But, some of us are actually avoiding. I don't think I really wanted to see the reality of the world that I lived in. I genuinely believe now that come lockdown, it was like, are you going to really look at what's going on here? But lots of people have been seeing it for years. Years.
That was one of the reasons I set up this organisation sort of 25 years ago. It's a sustainable development organisation, so it looks at every aspect of sustainable development, sustainability, and of course we have worked with major players with regard to big industrial plants and AMEC and S.H.O.P and paper mill and people who utilise natural resources at a massive level, PVC conglomerates, etc., and we use the arts and creative ways to get them to come up with more sustainable ways of creating, or realising that actually maybe they couldn't keep creating what they were creating there, to change tact for everyone's sake. And did consultations with various universities, whatever at Home Office. This is why I won't let these local politicians, say politicians, and basically a lot of them are busybodies that have no real, I don't know if they have friends, let alone...
you just hit the nail on the head
not
there.
Not all of them, some of them are great. So remember, if you're offended by this and you're a local councillor, it's probably because you're not very good. So for me, it's like, I'm not going to let them get away with it anymore. In a very peaceful way. It's like, I'm just going to be relentless until they no longer have the audacity, actually, as it turns out, to interfere with local community, let alone...
So can I come in? Because I, through lockdown, went through this... I'm feeling like an agitation from you. So
You're feeling like an agitation of what? That you're agitating me, or that the council are?
That feeling of the council, that agitation. And that's okay, but as what you call an empath, a sensitive person, a lot of us can feel what other people feel, and then we have to bring it back to myself. So I know that that's not my feeling, but it's actually making my heart race. Not that I've just had a nice cup of coffee that Lauren's made me as well, but... So
it's the sugar, people.
So one of the big things...
They get you hooked on sugar. It's a gateway drug.
One of the big things that I wanted to be able to do was come back to some level of neutrality. So in
Neutrality?
Yeah.
I'll never be neutral again.
But not neutral in a passive way, because as
I'll never be passive again.
He's really naughty, isn't he?
I'm just won't.
No, I love it, because I love sort of debating things. It's how
I know. I mean,
comes out.
God bless you. I mean, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about, honestly, it's kind of like, yes, these people are doing really bad things in our community. Maybe I should just, like a few other organisations and people do, I'll keep quiet just so I can get the grants. I'll keep quiet just so it's like...
Totally.
You'll take the taxpayers' money, you'll allow these people to act in a totally inappropriate, ineffective, and absolutely abhorrent way, and you then realise that all the system... It's like,
I'm sure I get very facial expressive as well. This is my passion, which we're on now, is that I've always seen things very differently, hence wanting to keep quiet. And even though I went into schools and I loved the silence of letting the children be still and finding that peace for them, I was also trying to find a really good way to communicate to the teachers. And I worked with some amazing teachers up at St Nicholas's, which is now called Silverwood, and they were really good to try and help me support to bring something through together. And the head there at the time, Katie, we called it compassionate education, because what I didn't want to do was point the finger at anyone, because what I could see, and I always called them waves of consciousness. I sort of saw that the earth can't come back to what it should be. You know, I'm not saying we're going to live in bliss. We've got a lot of work to do before we get back to that. But I think naturally the next generation know what they've got to do. I think the older generation have seen it, and somehow we need to bring the two back together. So after sort of going through lockdown, I couldn't believe it went on and on and on and on. I met this lady who I'd met previously, called Jacqueline Hobbs, and she talked about embodying more pure love. And I thought that's really interesting, because I, probably 7 or 8 years previous to that, had sat in someone's office in Chippenham thinking, it's about embodiment, it's about embodiment. But every time I tried to explain this to people, it would just go over the top of their head, and so I just back in my little shell. But lockdown really brought it to a point. I'd had all these incredible, what I'd call insights of what was going to happen on the earth, and yet there was no one there to share them with. And so I would keep a lot of it quiet, and I would listen to what everybody else was saying, knowing that that wasn't quite the way we should be doing it, but I didn't know how we should be doing it or what I could do to step into that space. And this beautiful meeting with you guys seems to be igniting some sort of balance. So I started drawing up these plans of opposites to try and help these teachers understand what was really happened to them and how we could need to come back into this flow in the middle. But as we're in this flow in the middle, we're actually embodying more and more of ourselves. So genetically, our belief systems, our family patterns, things we've been told, we're actually pushing them out of our body, because thoughts are just interference. They're not who we are. They're just bombarded by this world for consumerism to make us do things. So I could see then that this embodiment was really learning how to manage our own mind. So not loads and loads of techniques. If a thought comes in, is that thought yours or is it not yours? It's really simple. And it was like, how does that thought trigger your emotion? And we all have to embody and learn to sort of navigate our emotions, our thoughts, or it could be the overwhelming sensations in the body, which I see with a lot of young kids. They just are on this continual buzz and they don't know any other sensation in their body, because it's really scary. I think the scariest thing in this world is living in this body, and I think it's much harder than trying to have a relationship with someone. So this relationship with love with ourselves and embodying it, to me, is where we're going. And what I could see was happening in lockdown, that actually I could sort of talk about the politicians, and I didn't like what was going on, but I kept getting this nudge, they're another way. Their patterning comes from money. Their patterning comes from wanting to keep up and uphold that family tradition, or,
It's interesting because so many of them were taken at a young age and put into the care of strangers, essentially, or however people want to describe boarding schools. When you take a child, separate it from its family, that is really not a good idea.
And what about taking a parent
as Boris
away?
Johnson will prove. Same thing, but it's like if you meet someone who's been to boarding school in their, I've met a few, and of course you hear all sorts of stories, but just you don't need to hear the stories directly necessarily to understand that any child that has taken from a parent, particularly a mother usually, will have separation issues as a minimum, let alone all the other stuff that goes on with all this dysfunctional stuff that happens when people feel desperate and all the other bits. Can I just ask you to say what it is you do generally with these young people or your clients, just so that people have better understanding? Because I have we're talking because I know what it is, which is not your fault. You're talking, and I'm not conducting a very good interview, which is what I'm like. I'm not good at it.
Sometimes I like that.
Well,
because
you better enjoy this, because it ain't going to change.
Off the cuff, and sometimes that spontaneity.
Get me some cuffs, Lauren, will you, man? I told you. You thought I said a cup of green tea. I said get some cups with some green sleeves. Da 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 da. Say what you do.
So my passion is to go into schools to teach stillness, slowing down, relaxation, becoming body aware, and being okay to be.
How do you do it?
So
that's
really interesting.
You're going to do some workshops back in our S.H.O.P in Emery Gate.
I'd love to support people.
Yeah, I think it would be good if people got to experience what you're talking about. I'm very keen on what it is, and next week some people have watched this, and people do come and say, "Oh, Ed, I do watch your." I don't think they know what to describe this with.
I'll give it a good name.
Diatribe normally, but it's. We had the wonderful Judy Spears. Trudy. It's Trudy, isn't it? Trudy, yeah. Why am I saying Judy? See, I can't names. You see, you're saying dyslexia. I nearly said Delilah. Who's got the 5 Elements over in Bromham, and it's a lovely little place. And we're going back there on Monday because during the podcast with Trudy, we discovered that Lauren here had never had Reiki, and it seemed to be a good opportunity for us to ascertain from someone who'd never had it, to be able to, for Lauren to hopefully better understand what it is, but to experience it and then to tell us what she feels.
I think that's great. I called it self-referencing or experiential learning.
Experiential learning, I think, is what we like to call it, and it will be experiential learning.
Yeah.
For Lauren Jade Rogers, or Ruby, as I like to call her. Ruby Rogers, doing some Reiki in Bromham with Trudy. Don't know what that's about. Anyway, that's happening there. So you're going to do some workshops.
Yeah.
Watch this space, everyone.
So you wanted to know.
Yeah, so tell the people what it is now. So the people because the people other than people in Chippenham and the town council who are being pursued watch this diligently and go, what's she saying this week? Oh no, man. The Liberal Democrats will never get back into power. Ever.
I almost
not in Chippenham.
Managed to offer Melksham Town Council. I was going to do it with them. Because I thought
some great councillors. I know some great councillors. There's a load of councillors on Chippenham Council that go beyond to make sure to get rid of these
I would love to do a
Egypts.
session with the councillors because
we've done it. I've done 100%. We have worked up and down the country. This is what makes me laugh about these buffoons that I work with here. Some of them. It is. So I've got the Home Office. they're lucky if they go between the home and the town and the Neil Hall. They are so far removed from what's needed to happen. I knew it all along, but watching them hide during the lockdown where we were struggling, it's like, it's appalling. But luckily, everyone is going to know that, because we're going to specifically do focuses on each of these individuals, because some of them got interviewed when they were trying to get elected before. So we have these interviews, and we've got we've gone to the trouble. I feel like Ronnie Corbett. We've gone to the trouble. The producer said to me, he said, "Why don't we just find out lots of things they've said since they got elected, and some of the things they've been involved in, and it's not good, and make a profile so we can do it specifically when they're trying to get elected again." And I said, "Brilliant, let's do it." Do you know, if I conducted this interview, do you remember Frank Spencer? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not a real character. I think maybe I'd be less threatening. Do you know what I mean? I would be, if I... Well, those naughty councillors, they don't know what they're talking about. I went down there, they're like, I didn't even know what they were talking about. They were stopping kids that had come from really disadvantaged backgrounds getting the support they need, because their egos... I don't know if that'll work, but...
What about if we came in from the angle of who we are rather than who we're not? Because that's division. All I see in our world, and lockdown was that, it was a classic example of more divide and conquer. And I come from frequencies. So Reiki, I'll be really interested to hear how Lauren gets on.
Yeah.
It was a frequency that when I did my course, I recognised it as a similar frequency that was called something else. And I thought, this has the same feeling to me. So for me, I come in from that frequency. Everything I do is I self-reference within my own body of what's actually going on. So my whole thing was, I don't want to blame anybody. People need to take responsibility.
That's exactly it. I'm not blaming. I'm merely pointing out the ineffective way that they have been.
But what if we give them something for them to think about that
I think getting them sacked, getting them diselected, getting them exposed, so anyone else thinking about, I'm going to do this as a hobby, better not, because it's actually quite a serious role. I'm going to pretend to be interested or care. No, but when you're doing that, you're wasting loads of people's time. They're people so close. This is the bit.
I think people are to me, it's about patterns, and it's about, we were talking about the brain, hardwires. It becomes safe, like me being that passive person who really didn't want to come out. And that's why I did so much research. I was dyslexic, and then I wasn't dyslexic, and then I had a nervous breakdown because my brain couldn't take on, I'd gone from one extreme to, and because I was trying to sort the problem out. But, the conclusion that I've come to is all I had to do was basically, instead of, we sort of talk about people automatically our little finger comes out, doesn't it? When you curl that last finger in, you get a thumb up, and it's like, that's owning your own shit. And for me, even that passivity, I had to own that passivity. I had to own my own emotions. I had to own my thoughts. But I needed this lady, Jacqueline Hobbs, because she gave me some certain tips, and they were enough for me to go, neither accept it, reject it, own it. How are you feeling? So that's why I teach stillness, coming back to what I do.
Yeah, how do you do it though?
So when I went, this was a big recognition when I was 40. I went to the Special Yoga Centre in London to work with the kids, because I'd done yoga since I was 19, and it somehow had a really good effect on me. Loved any sport, any form of physicality. But when I went to the Special Yoga Centre, suddenly I realised I was a reverse breather. So most people breathe in, tummy goes out. Good sign that your body is naturally finding its pace. Where I would breathe in, tummy would go in. So almost where you get breath graspers, breath holders. So my whole respiratory system was working the opposite way to what was natural. So that was quite a big shock for me. So I wanted to work with these kids, and because I've got a gymnastic background as well, and I was watching and observing them, and as I went through all this body movement, and I watched it through gymnastics, where they twist these kids years ago, and none of them were using the breath. And anyway, long story short, I went on this course and I came away and I thought, I've got to do something different to the way they were doing it. And I started researching as we do, and I found this book on the healing sound of the human voice. And more, go to me another one.
No, three people are there just had seizures. Sorry about that.
But that's exactly what I do. So what I started doing was I'd realised that I was using some yoga, we call them the Bijam seed sounds, and I started using those, lam, ram, yam, and then I thought, I can't go into schools and teach that. That's too out there. You know, are you religious? No, I'm not religious. Am I this? No, I just want to teach the breath. And I found this book by this American author, and it just made sense when I read it. Humming sound,
vibration as well.
Yeah. Like a motorbike, like a car, like a washing machine, that humming sound, like a bee in nature. It's really cognitive and really soothing. And then he had all these other sounds, which were the vowel sounds. So he had like an E sound or an O or an Ah for the heart. And I was in St. Nick's at the time, and the more I used it, the more it would be really, really good to take them into stillness. And then observing the children. So the children have taught me everything. I owe everything to any youngster, teenager, even old people and babies. They have taught me and clarified what was in that book. But what I just took it on a different step. Coincidentally, the author who wrote the book, James D'Angelo, lives in Stroud in Gloucester. So we then became very, very good friends. And basically, St. Nick's and the lovely different heads, the 3 different heads that I worked with at different times, they let me stay in there over a long period of time, and the staff were just incredible, and we would make these sounds, and I learnt from that how the children would learn to self-reference, but to self-soothe. So in answer to your earlier question, what do? The breath. Because my breath was totally screwed up. Did I want to go in and work with these kids and tell them your breath's screwed up? You're doing that wrong again? You know, I didn't want to go in from a negative. What I wanted to do was empower them and give them, so some children would use and be much more comfortable with one sound than another sound. And then I could relate them at the time to the chakra points in the body, coming from a yogic background. And I would observe where the sound was, and I could almost work out whether they were out of their bodies, whether they were very grounded, whether they were heart-centered. And then when they'd come into a hum, a H-U-M, it's almost like the brain and the heart was coming into coherence. So it was after a long time, and that's the only place I was starting. So there's no forcing in what I was doing. All I wanted to do was to allow those children, with the incredible staff and teaching assistants that I worked with, to gradually be okay to live in their body. But what they had is they had the breath wherever they went. And if they made a sound, singing, why do we sing?
That's really interesting. We do a similar thing with kiddies that, well, I don't know about everyone else, but I like to work on songs when it's applicable to certain individuals, whether we work with adults or young people, for them to write their own, of course. It's their own story and they own it, and it's the whole thing about this. It's about everyone being empowered to be able to have their own media, have their own way of communicating, sharing it, not being at the mercy of these multinationals, whether they be big pharma, whether they be all these other that run the country. You know, we talk about politics, and they love the fact that people talk about politics as if it's real. It's not. These are just representatives who represent big plans and ideas and the financial wishes of major industries, like pharmaceuticals, like the food industry, like the sugar industry. Sugar people, sugar. It's a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug.
See, I don't come from that. You neither accept it or reject it.
Or don't eat it.
What we don't realise is the power of what we actually have. And that's what I want to give back. When you own your own you actually begin to embody through your spiritual body first, then your mind body. So that thought process can be so overwhelming. That's why I had a nervous breakdown. Is that my thought? Is that somebody else's thought? And of course, we're bombarded by technology, and if you're not supported in a positive way, you've got no reference point to start from. So as you come down, it's a different frequency and density. So the body is the last place that's going to heal. So you have to empower yourself by knowing it's not your thoughts, knowing that all thoughts are interference unless you choose them.
Action triggers thoughts, though. If for instance, if you started changing, diet's a really good one. If you start, and we talked briefly earlier on about fasting and all that sort of good stuff, and that's something I think people should definitely look into, and about taking back control, because we've been seduced into the idea of eating sugar all the time. It's been a major industry, the whole slave industry, etc., etc. In fact, lots of the industries were formed, lots of the wealth, the old families have got wealth, including the royal family, I think, have got wealth that derives, the Church of England, derives from the slave industry. I mean, you couldn't be more further from the idea of what you purport to be than to have invested in and armaments companies, etc., etc. However, sugar, without any doubt, I've been saying it for years, I've been at drug meetings and all sorts of things and said, it is a gateway drug to heroin. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, so, any drug, any
sugar. I'm just talking about sugar. Okay. Sugar, as a child, is the first thing we introduce. Look it up. We look if you look at what happens to a child with all the different and how and carbohydrates, obviously, but they're different sort of sugar. But the point is that if the whole world is glucose, if all the plants and all the trees and everything else, we have enough natural reserve. But we refine it. We put it in everything to make it more. Wow, this is a beautiful big round twirly curly whirly. Don't eat them. I used to eat a lot of them. As you can tell,
I love them too.
Yeah, me too. But that's a distraction. All of those things are
the
fantastic.
The good old Mars family.
Totally. But here's the thing: all of those things were just another delivery method. For giving us the drug that we all equally have been brought up on.
But again, it's an addiction, isn't it? It's an identity.
That we've been slipped in. You talked about belief systems. That's one of them. Yep. The belief that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, it is if it's not made of sugar. Have you ever seen an American we took? Where is it? I don't know if you can see this up here. Look, there you go. Look, group stages, journey across cultural divide. 17 young people from Wiltshire, a social worker from the county council, some foster parents, some other parents, took them to Native American reservations, right?
You mentioned,
and we stayed in this. The kids stayed on a reservation. We stayed in this motel, and when we looked at the breakfast, every single thing in the breakfast, bar the coffee, which they added sugar to, was donuts. It was all these amazingly sickness. Like, wow, this whole country is run on really, really. Because you become, it is an addiction. You become dependent on it. You don't realize it. You have all these different glucose spikes, etc., etc. It's embedded. It's all the breakfast cereals that purport to do. It's like, no, these are They're as dangerous as cigarettes.
It's taking healthy control, and if we were to educate not just the children, because to me the education is more the middle of the road. It's the adults we need to educate. I believe the younger generation actually know what they're doing, but they want to fit in with their parents. They want to fit in with their peer. They want to belong to something. We all want to belong to a tribe, and it is. With the algorithms that are set on phones and computers, let alone the masks that went up in lockdown, there was a horrendous amount of masks.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So to me, it can be, if we are not or haven't had in our education system an education about who we are and how to self-control, that's what I teach the kids. So at different ages I teach them healthy control. Is that your thought? You're repeating that word to me. Is that your word? Oh no, you've just heard that word from somebody else. If we were to teach that, and the schools that I've gone into have been absolutely brilliant, then the bigger we do it, the stillness is the most powerful thing. But you have to be, it's a thought. You have to give those kids that time to recognise the thoughts. But unless the staff, the councils are on board, I'm sure they want a better future for their grandchildren, whatever they've done. You know, or even Boris, he's got children now, I believe.
Yeah, but because he didn't have a good template, I believe, my theory on this, and it's not much of a theory, but it's possibly true, which makes it beyond a theory. The fact is that he thinks he's got all sorts of, bless him, and I feel really sorry for him, actually. In truth, I wouldn't swap with him.
No,
my hair.
In lockdown, I just thought, oh my God, would I want to be a politician now? No,
don't worry, he was fine. The only way I was going to believe that thing was real is if he died, and he didn't die. It's like, right, this isn't as what they say it is. Anyway, beyond all those other conspiracies, conspiracies, whatever. The reality of this is, if you send your kids away, the underlying message they're going to get, whether you like it or not, whether they tell you these words, is you don't have time for them. You do not, you think it's more important for you to follow a career. And most of the careers, and his dad couldn't have done anything of any great import because we'd have known about him. He talks about population control a lot.
Well, his dad did. He wrote a book as well, didn't he, on a virus?
Absolutely. Isn't that bizarre? Everyone, have a look at that. Stanley Johnson, yeah. I hope you are
That was
happy.
Some of the research that I did.
Well, there you go. So I'm saying, and also going back to the idea about writing songs, when the young people, if they can't write songs or they're not at the point they want to write songs, try and work on cover songs, like you were saying about taking the voice with them. I agree with you. You take this; it's the instrument you take everywhere, if you're lucky, because some people don't have voices, and I mean that. That's true. But the point is, exactly. But the idea that they will hear these songs, popular songs that we will work on with, and they'll remind them of that support of it. So it's a very similar. In the same way certain icons work, don't they? Memoirs of places and things. That's why we take them on residentials, etc., etc. Sorry, I just thought I'd go back to that because you made a really important point about the vibration, about the humming, about the idea of the voice and it being sacred, their own means of expression and a way to also self-soothe. Exactly
we
that.
We get the self-soothing first, then we get the self-regulation, then we can self-reference because our mind's clearer. Then we can take healthy control. Then we're taking healthy management, and that's what we want for the future for any child.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But all the component parts of those things are about access to good, healthy food, and I don't think many people are offered that. A lot of the food that, particularly anything that's processed, is. Already it's like the idea that that there's almost they'll never sell ice creams going that fast. Right there, Mick. The idea of processed food, the idea that that people can actually sell it, loads of it, not all of it, but sell processed food that isn't healthy for us is kind of like, what sort of society, community, civilization have we have? Who has though? You think we've fallen into it, or we've been directed into it, we've been herded into it? It's like 1984. All of the access to all of the alcohol. Back in the day, pubs opened for a very short time and whatever, and off licenses was the only way you could get alcohol outside of a pub. Now you have to have alcohol wherever you go. The ice cream man probably sells it. It's that accessible. There's a reason for that. That's not freedom of choice. That's freedom of exploitation, and to like the opiate, like the religion, being a way to calm and to control the community and society, etc., etc.
All belief systems. I was listening to a chap, again, that I hadn't listened
Capitalism.
to for a few months. No, the oldest religion in the world is a belief system.
Yeah.
So if we start recognising that our beliefs are not us, then we're on a line to supporting people to make better choices, because it's a healthy choice.
100%. But where I worry, and this is why I really have to expose these appalling local politicians, is that they don't get it.
No, they wouldn't, because it's a frequency.
But they don't get that these families in this town, in this lovely town of Chippenham, in this lovely county of Wiltshire, in this lovely country of England.
It's based on a debt slave money based system.
Of course, but they don't know that. It's not because they're dumb, it's because they're deliberately not taught it. And for people, and this is part of the reason why we're having this discussion, it's like, how do you access this information? You listen to gobshites like me, and then you go and make your own mind up, because I don't know the answers. Of course I don't. Look at me. But I certainly have spent the last 25 years, 27 years setting this thing up to look at all aspects of sustainable development. Diet, access to clean water, we talked about that briefly, air, shelter, food, but not just any old shizer. Has to be food that is absolutely going to do the very thing to fulfill its purpose, to allow our bodies to be in harmony with nature, because food comes from nature.
And
we are part of nature, not apart from nature.
We have to help people be comfortable in their own skin, because the only reason we don't make good choices is because the body is vibrating so much, or the mind is flicking so many places, that there's an external world, of all the algorithms, all the imagery, all the senses, and then there's the internal world of the mind, body, emotion and spirit. And in the middle of that is pure love, like we call it quadrality, the cross, right at the midpoint of that. And what we're all learning to do is to take that healthy control back of ourselves. That's how so that's where I come to. So my learning in lockdown, it was like frustration like you had, and I've sort of progressed on from that. It's not that I'm not frustrated, I've sort of moved on in a way like, we're a frequency. You and I are now creating a different ripple here with Lauren in Chippenham today. We are anchored to the earth. That's what quadrality is. These old systems weren't anchored into the earth. They were anchored into a system that was based on money and greed and, dare I say, all the horrific evil that does and has gone on in our planet for history.
Dare you say it, Lord, say it loud.
Well, we've got the latest film in the cinema coming up, haven't we? Child trafficking, and what goes behind all of that. That's a big, big, big subject. But again, it was another thing that I was like, shit, in lockdown. Oh my God, that's the nasty side of the truth, and then there's the positive side of what you're doing here in Chippenham as well. Do you know what I mean? From Can Do. So for me, we are the biggest atomic bomb that any politician, that any council could fear, because when we align and when we really are in control of what's happening on the inside of us, but also aware of the marketing, the algorithms that pour into our body, and that's what lockdown was. That COVID, I never believed in COVID. It was, to me, it was much more of a fear-based thing. The corona of our being. Should we talk about this incredible aura called the corona? That when it's whole and works in alignment with the universe, because our first relationship is with the universe, and it used to frustrate
but nobody, so many people don't know that. So to get them to get people realigned, or to get them balanced, or what have you, I'm going to suggest that we're going to have you go and do some workshops, and people can talk to you directly. I think that would be a really good idea, because obviously I'm not very good at interviewing people, because I've got too much going on, man. You'll say one thing, I'll say another. Going back to the atomic bomb thing, I don't want councils. I've given my time freely to councils, to the Home Office, to a variety of ministers, and always will do, because I appreciate that in every walk of life there are people who are in it for the right reasons, teaching or whatever, and some who are just doing it because they can't think of anything to do with their degree. There are some councillors in this town who actively encourage me to expose and tell me all sorts of stuff about how appalling the other councillors act, and it's not because they're party aligned, because they're not. It's because they too have gone, wow, this is incredible. This is how our community's been running for all these years. I don't want anyone to fear. I want them to embrace, because
absolutely, that's where you
because I work in the community and society and have done all up and down this country, I'm actually probably better placed than a lot of people to understand what's going wrong in our society and the best ways to fix it. That there are people that are actively trying to stop us, who are elected.
But they can't stop us because
No, I know that. What I'm saying is that they are actively trying to stop us, not that they're stopping us. They ain't never
That's
stopping
the
us.
old pyramid structure. And
Yes.
I saw this beautiful
Yeah.
analogy in lockdown of made of sugar cubes. And basically, they
Gateway
just
drug,
poured,
people.
yeah, where they poured this blue solution in, and what's happening is it's toppling. Basically, the old systems have gone, and it's basically it's dissolving.
Yeah.
And basically, we only needed 1%. And for some reason, I always knew that. We only needed 1%. And again, everything works on these polarities of opposite. Whatever had gone on at the top of this pyramid, there was then 1% of people born onto this earth, what you might call the aliens that they look for, who were going to bring it all back and change the alignment of power so that everybody embodies the true spirit of who they really are.
I'd rather it was just like this, though.
We've got some time.
I'd rather it was all level and it was all circular and everyone did their best for each other, because
that's where it's heading.
Well, in lots of my experiences in this town, in the place I've worked, I've come across amazing, inspirational people, and I've been in awe of them. So for me, it's kind of like, right, okay, this pattern replicates itself in each thing. This is why I often say people need to do this, whatever we're talking about, explore, look at how your money's been spent, how our money has been spent. Love it when they say the government. This is, the fact we've got an unelected, Egypt, Itchy Ballsack, as I like to call him, at the top there. Absolute disgrace that we have a system that allows that. Liz Truss destroyed people's lives. It's people that killed themselves because of what Liz Truss did, because she made the I would imagine that they became the idea of being able to maintain their standard of living and or just cover their bills was absolutely destroyed by the very fact. It's like, you don't need money and shares to live, do you? You need food, you need water. So obviously the system doesn't work. It's like, is everyone fed? No. Then the system doesn't work.
But then the system won't work until we realise who we are, and that actually...
I'm Frank Spencer. I say...
You did a really good impression.
Thank you. Who cares at this stage? What I'm going to do is... She is a lovely woman. We will put up... advertisement when you're going to be in a shop, so people can come and meet you and they can ask you themselves, and you can talk to them, and maybe you can describe, or you can do a session or whatever. But I think it's vitally important, like you on Monday with Trudy, it's important. I know people are going to say, but Ed, you're so good looking. Thank you all, thank you. That's my burden and I'm carrying it, masked with my fat. It's important that you can be stimulated by certain people, and it's having fantastic people come in, talk, share, inspire. People go and check it out. But you can check this person out if you come to Chippenham when we put up this advertisement. We've got the Unlock Reset Festival, which was a response to the lockdown. Unlock Reset Festival in Chippenham at Monkton Park on the 26th and 27th of August. I want to say a big thank you to Wendy and Pete Claridge and everyone that supports them at the Pitch and Putt. All the acts that are going to be there. Check it out in the newspaper, Gazette and Herald, and online, and see all those things. You should come. It's going to be great. But in the meantime, I want to say thank you to you. Thank you, you're dead right. We'll come back to this. We'll have another in a while.
I love debates like this. It's
great. Debates, man. This isn't a debate.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is this. We'll set it up so people can actually talk to you themselves, and you can ruminate
happy
with them. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
You, Ed,
thank you.
And thank you, Lauren.
Very beautiful hands. That's very warm and reassuring. Lauren, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say a big thank you to Melanie C, who is about to sing this wonderful song. Over to you, Mel. Spinning at 1,000.